Chapter 1420. Within the vast and boundless void, undercurrents were surging. The 9 underworlds' devilish domain seemed to be filled with vitality and turned into an independent life form. It continuously expanded outwards and devoured the vast void. However, within the void, more than one unfathomable, immeasurable, and indescribably powerful will manifested. It seemed to be an existence that surpassed the creation of the world. It was unfathomable and existed on a completely different level. Even those who had already pushed open the immortal door wouldn't be able to sense its profundities. However, the 9 underworlds could clearly sense it. As such, the restless devilish domain quickly regained its calm. However, it didn't stop the immortal realm experts from leaving the 9 underworlds and disappearing within the void. The one in the lead was a clump of shadow. It didn't even have a specific shape, as if it had merged with the boundless dark void. It was one of the 12 devilish gods, one of the 6 extinct devils alongside the water devil and earth devil, the wood devil. He could also be called the shadow devil. The shadow devil took the lead and led the group of devils towards the region where Chen Xuanzong, Chu Lily, and the others disappeared. Behind him, devilish chi surged, accompanied by other grand heavenly realm devils. This battle concerned the rebirth of the 2 extinct devils, water devil and earth devil. Naturally, the 9 underworlds couldn't ignore it. Even if they knew that the other forces might surround them, they had no choice but to take the risk. However, within the boundless void, someone quickly obstructed their path. A Taoism grand heavenly realm expert. The 2 sides immediately clashed. Both sides were wary of each other. The 9 underworlds had to prevent other forces from interfering, while the orthodox Taoism had to prevent others from taking advantage of the situation. Even if the immortal court and the blessed lands of the White Lotus were engaged in an intense battle, the immeasurable heavenly lord's profundities couldn't be underestimated. In the past, Sua Mingzhang's sudden rise in strength resulted in the immortal court's current predicament by slaying numerous immortal court members. If the immeasurable heavenly lord had the chance to lock onto his tracks, he might even take the risk and take action. Due to this, the 2 sides continued to fight. The group of 9 underworlds devils were obstructed, and they couldn't do anything. Only the group of devils that were previously scattered around the outskirts helplessly shrunk their encirclement and continued searching for Yin Zhaoge and the others. With limited manpower, the search speed was naturally much slower. Time slowly passed. Within the domain of 1,000 scales, Chen Xuanzong and Chu Lily within the metal ball were continuously removing their devil intents. The talisman incantation floating between the 2 of them grew larger and larger, and the icy blue light on it grew brighter and brighter. The cold and cruel will from the water demon kept roaring and struggling. The talisman incantation didn't just hover in the air, but was constantly swaying left and right. In the beginning, the talisman incantation tried to approach Chen Xuanzong. Chen Xuanzong and Chu Lily finally met again. The devilish marks that were split apart due to Yin Zhaoge and Jie Mingkong had now been restored. For the water demon, Chen Xuanzong was the most suitable body for him. However, Chen Xuanzong's cultivation realm was higher than Chu Lily's in the first place. At this moment, his willpower was even clearer and more resolute than Chu Lily. Therefore, after a short tug of war, the talisman incantation started to move towards Chu Lily. However, the initiative was currently in Yin Zhaoge and Chen Xuanzong's hands. Although the water devil was tyrannical, it was hard for him to succeed. However, at this moment, everyone's mind suddenly trembled and their vision blurred. No matter if it was Chen Xuanzong or Yin Zhaoge, Feng Yunsheng, and Yin Di, they all felt their hearts surging, and they couldn't control themselves. Chu Lily, who had remained silent all this while, suddenly opened her eyes. Her pupils were pitch black, devoid of any radiance or emotions. Although the voice that came out of her mouth was her own, her tone was completely different from before. So it's the domain of 1,000 scales. No wonder it could obstruct our search and communication. Yin Zhaoge forcefully stabilized his fluctuating emotions while staring at Chu Lily. Heart Devil, he yelled with a deep voice. Together with the Water Devil and the Wood Devil, they were known as the 6 great extinct devils. They were one of the most ancient existences among the devils, the true undying Heart Devil. Legend had it that as long as sentient beings existed in this world, the Heart Devil could be reborn. It was publicly acknowledged as the hardest existence to kill. The other party's tone was calm, as if an old man was chatting with his junior. You're Yen Zhaoge, right? In recent years, I've heard of your name. Now that I've met you, you're truly extraordinary. As she spoke, Chu Lily turned around and looked at Feng Yunsheng. If you've had enough fun, remember to return home, my child. Feng Yunsheng shook her head and said, I'm afraid you've mistaken me for someone else. The Heart Devil smiled and glanced at Yen Di. She nodded and said, The 9 underworlds welcomes prodigies like you and your son at any time. The Elder Lord's thoughts are hard to fathom. Now that your Taoism doesn't have a Tao realm bigwig leading you, you're still trying to survive in the cracks and walking on the edge of a blade. Although your Taoism heritage wouldn't be severed, your personal safety isn't guaranteed. If anything goes wrong, you'll be consigned to eternal damnation. Although my 9 underworlds is being suppressed by the other Taoism factions, we're still stronger than your 3 clear lineage. As for how we progress, it'll depend on fate. At the very least, we don't have to worry about preserving our heritage. Chu Lily's tone wasn't panicky. It wasn't overly sincere, causing others to feel bewitched. At the same time, it was filled with sincerity, causing others to have a favorable impression of her. However, Yen Di remained unmoved. He only stared at the Heart Devil calmly. Upon seeing this, the Heart Devil didn't say anything else. She only smiled and shook her head. She stared at Yen Zhaoge and Yen Di. No matter how today's matter ends, what I said earlier will still be effective. She finally looked at Chen Xuanzong. I can see that your heart isn't calm anymore. That's not important. What's important is that your heart is already in a mess. The Heart Devil smiled and closed her eyes again. Chu Lily seemed to have lost all signs of life. However, Chen Xuanzong let out a groan and frowned. Within his eyes, black radiances faintly flickered. However, Chen Xuanzong didn't panic. Instead, his expression remained calm, because during their conversation, Yen Zhaoge's hand seals continuously changed. In the end, he formed a seal with both of his hands and placed it in front of his chest. Duo! Yen Zhaoge's voice was like thunder, and he let out a loud yell. The metallic sphere that enveloped everyone, and the void suddenly underwent another transformation. The 81 clumps of flames within the sphere were already burning fiercely. As for the metallic sphere itself, it radiated with radiance and became completely transparent. Countless talismans and patterns converged at this moment to form a total of 81 radiant paths, resembling 81 rings with different trajectories and directions, before beginning to circulate in unison with Yen Zhaoge and the others at their center. The 81 radiant halos had the same center. However, they were rotating in different directions and intertwined with each other. It was as if the 81 constellation trajectories were revolving in unison. This chaotic heavenly devil slaying ritual is only secondary against other devils. Its main purpose is to guard against you, the Heart Devil, said Yen Zhaoge quietly. There were some principles that the inner demon could figure out on their own, but when he combined them together, he was at a loss for a short period of time. I've embarrassed myself in front of you. It's normal that you don't recognize me. This chaotic heavenly devil slaying ritual is a little trick that I invented together with my wife and Senior Chen. Yen Zhaoge's hand seals continued changing without stopping. Indeed, it has never appeared before. The chaotic heavenly devil slaying ritual that you saw today is the first one in history. At the same time, it is also the first time it is being used. Yen Zhaoge clasped his hands together in front of his chest once more, then pushed his arms forward together. It exists specifically to guard against you. Please correct me. The chaotic heavenly devil slaying ritual's 81 halos spun faster and faster. At the same time, the radius of the chaotic heavenly devil slaying ritual began to shrink. More and more chain-like beams of light descended, denser and denser. Under the entanglement of the light mist, the colorful clouds gradually turned into sparse mist, and then disappeared. The younger generation will surpass us in time. Prodigies. The Heart Devil's voice gradually became weaker and weaker, until it completely disappeared. The colorful clouds above Chen Xuanzong and Chu Lily's heads disappeared as well. Chu Lily closed her eyes once again, as if she had lost consciousness and was in deep slumber. Chen Xuanzong's gaze regained its clarity, and he continued removing the devilish intents within his and Chu Lily's bodies. Don't be careless. Yen Zhaoga's voice resounded within the void. The heart devil is unpredictable. Currently, he's only temporarily being isolated by the chaotic heavenly devil slaying ritual. If there's any mistake, he would immediately take advantage of it and resurrect himself. In fact, if time drags on for too long, he might even slowly infiltrate us once again. Yen Zhaoga's expression turned serious. Other devils might also find their way to the domain of thousand scales. Everyone nodded with a serious expression. Everyone knew that if time drags on for too long, not only would Chen Xuanzong and Chu Lily's situation change, even the awakened sky cosmos's Shi Jun and Ying Yuzhen's situation would become more and more disadvantageous. Chen Xuanzong's expression was calm, but his gaze was focused. The ice-blue radiance between him and Chu Lily became brighter and brighter, and expanded. As time passed, the results became more and more obvious. However, very quickly Feng Yunsheng, who was standing by the side, frowned. They still found us. Within her pupils, the blue-black devilish flames flickered. Yen Zhaoga and the others knew that Feng Yunsheng was extremely sensitive towards most evil devils. Even with the chaotic heavenly devil slaying ritual, and the domain of thousand scales between them, she could still sense that some devils were already nearing the domain of thousand scales, and had discovered their location. The domain of thousand scales had a miraculous effect of isolating the evil devils. It was nurtured by the world of creation, and was a famous and rare devil suppression holy land. Yen Zhaoga and the others were within, causing the great devils to have a hard time searching for them. However, on the other hand, the devils didn't have any suspicions when they saw the domain of thousand scales from afar. Naturally, they knew that their target was here. After finding one, they contacted the others. Without any hesitation, everyone started gathering there. In almost an instant, the great devils communicated with each other and stepped through the void, descending upon the universe where the land of thousand scales was located. At this moment, many twisting holes and vortexes appeared in the pitch-black void. Violent ice-cold and bloodthirsty devilish chi surged from within. As if dark clouds obscuring the void, they shrouded the entire space. Amidst the surging devilish chi, blood-red lightning twisted and flickered. Under the great devil's actions, the entire universe seemed to have transformed into the 9 underworlds. The surrounding regions even seemed to be evolving into the land of tranquil streams. Under the gloomy devilish chi, only the domain of thousand scales was filled with streams of lights. They were like fishes with flickering scales, continuously leaping out of the water's surface and falling back down. Within the boundless devilish domain, a majestic will manifested from within. Strange and abstruse syllables resounded. They were completely different from the evil devil's messy languages. They were filled with a sense of reversal and distortion. While opposing the great Tao, they seemed to contain their own unique principles, making them extremely abstruse. As the syllables changed, they were still abstruse. However, the other 9 underworld's evil devils could understand their meaning. I'll deal with the woman who stole the Doomsday Heavenly Devil's authority and went astray. Quickly destroy the domain of thousand scales. Today, we welcome the Water Emperor and the Earth Emperor back. It wasn't that it was disrespectful to call him by his name, but that the title of Heavenly Demon was the most respectful title, and only the Tao Realm Demon ancestor was worthy of it. When the evil devils mentioned the name of the Heavenly Devil, it was equivalent to the Buddhists mentioning the Gautama Buddha, and the Taoists mentioning the 3 pure ones. This woman stole the Doomsday Heavenly Devil's authority in the first place. Plucking her is just a punishment. The blissful devil monarch said unhurriedly. If I can gain the Doomsday Heavenly Devil's favor because of this, and become the Doomsday Heavenly Devil's reincarnation body in the future, it'll be my honor. The great ape sneered. Go then. I won't stop you. Still, have you forgotten that the heart demon mentioned that she's just a step away from becoming a grand luo? Do you think you'd be able to defeat her who wields the Doomsday Heavenly Demon authority? Can she defeat the entire 9 underworlds? She'll eventually fall into our hands. The blissful devil monarch smiled. I don't mind sharing it with everyone. The great devil with 4 heads and 4 arms whose facial features could not be seen said coldly. The vast freedom heavenly demon, and the other emperors will decide on how to deal with this woman. If you dare to make a decision on your own, prepare to die. We have to capture her first, don't we? The blissful devil monarch was neither angry nor flustered, and his expression remained calm. The great ape snorted. Then what are we waiting for? Let's end this quickly and deal with them. Let's welcome Emperor Water back, and interrogate them about where they hid Emperor Earth's reincarnation body. Apart from them, more and more 9 underworlds great devils appeared. For a time, the devils danced wildly, and the devil flames filled the skies. Behind them, the Grand Lua-level evil devil oversaw the formation. The group of devils charged towards the domain of 1,000 scales in an attempt to tear it apart. However, at this moment, a patch of black suddenly appeared amidst the sparkling waves. Then, a horrifying saber light appeared and swept through the void. Other than helping Chun Xuanzong and Chu Lily get rid of the devilish intent, Yan Zhaoga and the others were guarding the domain of 1,000 scales. Not only did the domain of 1,000 scales and the chaotic heavenly devil slaying ritual conceal their tracks and isolate the devilish cheese invasion, they also assisted Chun Xuanzong and Chu Lily in getting rid of the devilish intent. With so many preparations and assistance, Chun Xuanzong could successfully erase the water devil's devilish seal and attempt to suppress it further, preventing its rebirth. As such, they had to concentrate their strength and execute the ritual to deal with the water devil. While they could defend against the devilish intense infiltration of the inner devils, they couldn't use it as a defensive formation to defend against the enemy's true body. As such, when facing the evil devils, Yan Zhaoga and the others had to defend against the domain of 1,000 scales and the chaotic heavenly devil slaying ritual. The reason why they temporarily relied on the pill hall and the earth-splitting pearl to delay the earth devil's rebirth was so that they could effectively gather their strength to guard the domain of 1,000 scales. Feng Yunxing took the lead and slaughtered her way out of the domain of 1,000 scales. She fought against the invading devils, and all who stood in her way were annihilated. However, her mind quickly shuddered. Under the devilish domain's shroud, an extremely horrifying existence shook the void. Feng Yunxing wasn't unfamiliar with the other party's devilish intent. It was the evil devil that fought against her at the Starry River tributary, a top-notch great devil expert that had ascended to the grand heavenly realm. The two sides didn't need to speak any further, and immediately engaged in battle. Although she was a grand virtual immortal, her opponent was equivalent to a Taoism's grand heavenly immortal. However, Feng Yunxing didn't hold back. Twin black radiances flickered above her head, manifesting the might of Luo Yuan's chaos annihilation. While blocking the enemy's attacks, she also attacked the other devils present. As for her opponent, he seemed to be using softness to overcome toughness. Dense devilish qi enveloped Feng Yunxing like a spider web, slowly tightening around her. While this great devil was tyrannical, he had to be cautious. Feng Yunxing was only a step away from the grand heavenly realm. She stayed within the great void to maintain self-control. The 9 underworlds was delighted to see Feng Yunxing lose control and become a devil. However, before that moment arrived, no one was willing to face the grand heavenly realm's doomsday saber. The outcome of this battle was unpredictable. Even if Feng Yunxing had her concerns, she had already let it go and focused on the battle in front of her, allowing her to perform at a higher level than before. As for her opponent, he wasn't as reserved as he was when he probed her outside the Starry River tributary. Instead, he displayed greater strength. Since the devils had left the 9 underworlds and wanted to fight openly, the great devils had also let go of their worries. Chapter 1423. This grand heavenly realm great devil displayed greater strength, yet at the same time, he was more patient. Against Feng Yunxing, whose cultivation was lower than his, he appeared rather conservative. Only, amidst his conservatism, viciousness and ruthlessness could be seen. He wasn't afraid of Feng Yunxing's saber, and his attacks were both offensive and defensive. Instead, he was helping the other great devils to block Feng Yunqing's attacks. Most evil devils were cruel or manic. They rarely cared about other devils. While this great devil seemed to be helping the other evil devils to block Feng Yunqing's attacks, he was actually secretly laying down a trap. Strands of devilish qi crisscrossed and didn't disperse for a long time, and they formed into an expanse that gradually transformed into a heaven-encompassing net that trapped Feng Yunqing within. The blissful devil monarch and the other devil's plan was coincidentally this great devil's. Since Feng Yunqing wasn't here, they would capture her and bring her back to the 9 underworlds. The water devil and the earth devil's return was naturally the most important matter. They were the first priority. However, it would be best if they could bring Feng Yunqing back to the 9 underworlds. After all, Feng Yunqing had entered the awakened sky cosmos together with Yin Zhaoge. Her whereabouts had always been difficult to track down. Now that they had the rare opportunity to drag her here and fight to the death, the great demons naturally had to seize this hard-won opportunity. As Feng Yunqing fought against the grand heavenly realm devil, the other evil devils didn't join the battle. Instead, they continued attacking the domain of 1,000 scales. Yin Zhaoge and Yin Di's silhouettes surfaced from the domain of 1,000 scales streams of lights. Yin Zhaoge looked at the chaotic devils before him and took a deep breath. Then, he flipped his palm and slapped the streams of lights beneath his feet. Within the streams of lights that resembled a long river, clumps of lights floated up one after another. Then, runes extended out from the clumps of lights, intersecting with each other and gradually fusing together, manifesting a humongous formation rune. Then Yin Zhaoge flipped his palm. As he flipped his palm, the entire domain of 1,000 scales that resembled a long river seemed to have flipped over. Upon seeing this, the great devils were startled. Then, as the domain of 1,000 scales flipped over, space was distorted. Due to the domain of 1,000 scales' unique ability to suppress evil devils, the boundless devilish domain that sealed the surrounding void couldn't stop the distorted space from opening. Streams of light flew out from the broken space-time. The exalted lunar luminary Ling Qing, prime clear lineage, number 1 expert of the roving jade heavens, sword rotating duality Gao Qingxian, sheath edge and nurture the sword. After unsheathing his edge, he went from a true immortal to a peak profound immortal. His title was changed to Spring Emperor, Long Xingquan. Taoist Cloud Conquest was also known as the Sheath Edge and Nurture Sword Taoist. During the Battle of the Roving Jade Heavens migration, he reached the peak of the profound immortal realm and changed his title from Emperor Cloud to Emperor Cloud. Taoism's orthodox lineage experts appeared one after another, blocking off the great demonic army's path towards the domain of 1,000 scales. Although today's battle wasn't directly related to the prime clear lineage's roving jade heavens, this matter involved the 9 underworlds and the reincarnation of the 2 extinct devils. Since they were of the same mind, Gao Qingxian and Taoist Cloud Conquest acted together to protect Chen Xuanzong and assist him in successfully subduing the devils. If he allowed the water devil and the earth devil to be reborn and return to the 9 underworlds safely, it wouldn't take long for them to return to their peak state under the Fiend God's empowerment. The threat was self-evident. The heretics were the enemies of the orthodox Taoism lineage. The same was true for the 9 underworlds. Their invasion towards the human realm was omnipresent. No one could guarantee that their disciples wouldn't be lured into the devils by the 9 underworlds, or be targeted by the great devils, and become their reincarnation vessel. If they could weaken the 9 underworlds as much as possible, Gao Qingxian and the others were willing to contribute. When the 9 underworlds' great devils attacked, there were plenty of Taoism's grand virtual immortals among them. Similar to the sonorous voice of the great Tao, the devilish voice that distorted one's heart and caused one to lose control resounded throughout the universe. Feng Yunqing was busy fighting against the grand heavenly realm evil devil and didn't have the time to care about this. However, as the 2 virtual immortals, Ling Qing and Gao Qingxian arrived, the sonorous voice of the great Tao resounded and instantly slowed down the distorted devilish voice. The bright moonlight transformed into sparse radiance that scattered across the void, cleansing the torrential devilish aura. The dazzling sunlight transformed into boundless golden radiance that shone within the dark starry sky. Gao Han wasn't present. However, his grand virtual immortal artifact, the Holy Radiance Banner, was in Ling Qing's hands once again. Under the illumination of the sun and moon, Ling Qing's attack forced the group of devils to retreat. The ape-like great devil opened his mouth wide and revealed his ferocious fangs. His eyes were as ominous as a blood pond. As he roared, a shocking power erupted from his body, scattering the radiance of the sun and moon as he charged towards Ling Qing. Ling Qing remained fearless. With the combination of the sun and moon, she clashed head-on against the great devil that resembled an ancient divine mountain. She would fuse with the sun and moon to face the enemy head-on, or converge with yin and yang to reverse the enemy's attack. Or, she would use the extreme yin stratagem to defend and neutralize the enemy's attack. Her various transformations were flawless, with both offense and defense. She fought against the grand virtual ape devil without backing off at all. Even when the world was flipped upside down, she still maintained her position and didn't give her opponent any chance to take a step forward. All she could do was stare at the domain of thousand scales and lament. On the other side, Gao Qingshuan's attacks weren't as watertight as Ling Qing's. However, her murderous aura was much heavier. Two sword lights fused together. In an instant, a few evil devils were slain. The four-headed, four-armed great devil, that had dark clouds as his legs hurriedly went up against the attacks. However, he didn't expect Gao Qingshuan's clone to be so sharp. As soon as they clashed, one of his arms was severed. As he roared, black radiances gathered above the great devil's head. Majestic devilish chi manifested. He didn't dare to hold back any longer, and attacked with all his might. However, under Gao Qingshuan's dual swords fused, the sword lights revolved and reincarnated, as if the world's creation was changing. Even if the four-headed, four-armed great devil possessed extraordinary strength, he was still battered by Gao Qingshuan's attacks. As his movements slowed down slightly, his head was severed by Gao Qingshuan's sword. The great devil was both shocked and enraged. As he defended against the attacks, he felt a chill in his heart. His recovery speed was astonishing. He constantly gathered devilish chi in an attempt to heal his severed head and arm. However, his efforts were futile. The Taoism's prime clear lineages, sword arts were so ferocious that they could extinguish vitality. Even the great devil found it hard to defend against them. Upon seeing this, the blissful devil monarch's brows twitched slightly, and he leaned over. Although he didn't have a good relationship with the other great devils, they were all in the same boat now. He couldn't just sit by and watch. However, very quickly, the blissful devil monarch stopped moving. On the battlefield before him, a majestic and tyrannical saber light waved around. Like a tiger entering a flock of sheep, it slaughtered the evil devils that attempted to invade the domain of thousand scales. Even Taoism's tranquil, profound, immortal-level devils couldn't withstand the saber light. Chapter 1424. The saber light was cold and unstoppable. The one who attacked was Yan Di. Despite being in the tranquil, profound, immortal realm, the group of devils couldn't withstand the majestic and domineering saber light. Where the saber light passed by, the devils retreated. If they didn't, they would either die or be gravely injured. Compared to Gao Qingxian and her clone's dual sword amalgamation in the same realm, Yan Di's strength was slightly inferior. However, when Gao Qingshuan's dual sword amalgamation manifested the world's situation, it allowed others to see the combination of the heaven-opening sword and the world-extinguishing sword. The combination of the two resulted in the unstoppable momentum of creation. Yan Di's attack was even smoother, as if everything was natural. When his saber descended, it was the true essence of the creation's profundities. The world's situation advanced, manifesting the profound and majestic principles of the world's boundless great Tao. It was somewhat similar to the creation's sovereign revealing his true form. His words were the law, causing others to not dare to disobey him. Seeing this, the blissful devil monarch frowned slightly and went forward. For martial practitioners like Yan Di who were proficient in attacking, when facing opponents who were inferior to them, they would often be able to end the battle in the blink of an eye, sweeping through everything in a domineering manner. Although Yan Di's overall strength was inferior, he was still adept in attacking. If Yendi's fighting style wasn't careful, his opponent might still defeat him. However, after carefully observing the grand simplicity splendor cloud above Yendi's head, the blissful devil monarch knew that no matter how hard the profound immortal realm devils tried to find an opportunity, they wouldn't be able to defeat Yendi. If Yendi was given enough time, he alone could wipe out all the grand virtual realm devils. The blissful devil monarch sighed and took a step forward, arriving near Yendi. Yendi's expression didn't waver at all. He slashed his saber towards the blissful devil monarch's head. However, this old devil was also a battle-hardened person. Originally, he was approaching Yendi through the void, but he suddenly retreated. The void that his figure passed through was distorted, forming creases that resembled wounds. However, as the blissful devil monarch dodged Yendi's attack, the distorted void cracks were also under his control, helping him to block Yendi's saber. At this instant, the blissful devil monarch stopped retreating and once again advanced forward. At such a close distance, he instantly arrived before Yendi as he charged forward once more. Yendi's expression did not change as where his saber passed. That spatial crevice was directly shattered. The horrifying saber light spun in the air and slashed towards the blissful devil monarch again. The blissful devil monarch didn't even try to dodge. His devilish chi circulated around his body and forcefully blocked Yendi's saber. When one ascended to the great void and the 5 chi's unifications, the immortal astral continent would be hard to injure. The blissful devil monarch was using his realm to suppress Yendi. He was bullying Yendi for being a profound immortal and not being able to break through his 5 chi's unification. Meanwhile, he extended his index finger, tapping towards Yendi's forehead. The red dot on his fingertip was dazzling and misty, like light and mist, real and illusory. Not to mention the fact that his opponent was hit by the extreme bliss finger. Just looking at the red light at the tip of his finger would make one's heart flutter and feel uneasy. The strength of a person's cultivation seemed to have become insignificant. His spirit was floating in the air, as if it was about to be extracted by the blissful devil monarch's finger. The world was too bitter, and people always had countless things to yearn for. That dot of red light was like a lamp that guided people to ascend to paradise early. A lamp that made their dreams come true. Wine, women, avarice, anger, the 7 emotions and 6 desires. As a martial arts practitioner, they would always yearn to climb higher and higher, and their strength to become stronger and stronger, right? This was also a kind of yearning, a human's great desire. As long as there was a yearning, that dot of red light would be able to satisfy everything. It would make one forget to return, and it would be hard for them to extricate themselves from it. Although the blissful devil monarch was proficient in the yin-yang plucking technique, his current cultivation had already reached the stage where he returned to his original state. Naturally, he wouldn't be obsessed with the method of pleasure between a man and a woman. His martial art concept had already reached the level of a living being. He had seen through all kinds of desires, and it was all-encompassing. However, facing his finger, Yendi didn't pull back his saber to block it. The blurry nebula that looked like a lotus flower spread out on top of Yendi's head, as if layers of universes were unfolding. The existence that looked like a lotus flower and a clump of clouds seemed to be only a tiny dot above Yendi's head. However, it was also as huge as the heavens and the myriad of worlds. No matter how the old devil's blissful finger changed, it couldn't land on Yendi, and could only land on the blurry nebula. The red light was all-encompassing. Even when it landed on the grand simplicity splendor cloud, it didn't dissipate for a long time. It even tried to break out of the grand simplicity splendor cloud's encirclement. However, the grand simplicity splendor cloud and Yendi were one. As Yendi's cultivation and strength increased, the miraculous effects of the grand simplicity splendor cloud also grew stronger. When the blissful devil monarch's finger landed on the grand simplicity splendor cloud, it was like a clay ox entering the sea. After pausing for a moment, Yendi's domineering saberlight attacked again and landed on the blissful devil monarch. Although the blissful devil monarch wasn't injured, the majestic power that could topple mountains and overturn seas shook him, causing him to stagger and retreat. Some other devils thought that they could take the opportunity to attack the domain of thousand scales, while Yendi was fighting against the blissful devil monarch. However, Yendi immediately slashed with his saber and beheaded the other party. This thing, the blissful devil monarch's expression, wasn't as relaxed as before. His brows slowly knitted together. 5 cheese unifications, immortal aura was hard to harm. He was indeed fine after taking a slash from Yendi. However, under the protection of the grand simplicity splendor cloud, even a grand virtual devil like him couldn't harm the tranquil profound immortal in front of him. Yendi's saber light swung around, and as he looked disdainfully, he blocked the blissful devil monarch and the other great devils in midair. Upon seeing this, the blissful devil monarch's expression turned cold. He let out a long roar, and black radiances gathered above his head, revealing a terrifying brilliance. Rays of red radiances danced in the void. As they intersected, they quickly formed a formation and enveloped Yendi within it. The blissful devil monarch strolled in the void. It was more like the Taoist's astral steps technique. In an instant, the blissful myriad devil's formation was formed. Once the formation was formed, red radiances flickered, and black auras lingered. In an instant, thousands of devils were formed, and Yendi was trapped in the center. As the innumerable devils wore down Yendi's saber intent, they also flew towards the grand simplicity splendor cloud. They opened their mouths, and were about to chew on the chaos that resembled a lotus flower and a cloud. Let's see how long you can last. The blissful devil monarch stared at the formation coldly. All of you, hurry up and destroy the domain of thousand scales, and assist Emperor Gui Water. The other great devils responded to his command, and prepared to pass through the massive blissful myriad devils formation in the void, and continue pouncing towards the domain of thousand scales. However, at this moment, the massive formation suddenly trembled. The blissful devil monarch's expression changed slightly, and the other great devils subconsciously stopped in their tracks. Within the blissful myriad devils formation, where black auras lingered and red radiances flickered, Yendi's expression was cold, and his gaze was prideful. Chapter 1425. Countless devils were gnawing on the grand simplicity splendor cloud. Once the grand simplicity splendor cloud's defenses were breached, these devils would instantly absorb a person's essence, chi, and spirit. Although the appearance of the devils was ferocious, when one was sucked dry by them, one would be immersed in a hallucinatory extreme joy. There would be no pain, and one would leave this world without feeling anything. Currently, before Yendi were layers upon layers of devilish figures, countless ferocious devils lunging over, as they completely filled the surrounding space, not leaving any gaps at all. The devils were even continuously biting and devouring each other, and they were extremely ferocious and evil. Yendi watched all of this coldly, as he instead strode forward towards the terrifying scene before him. His entire body was shrouded in dense mist. As the immortal aura that was formed by the combination of the 2 types of immortal chi, morality chi and chi transformation chi, circulated, there was not only an image of firmness and immortality, but also an image of endless changes. However, accompanied by Yendi's stride forward, the viciousness that signified the calamity, extinction, savagery, and evil abruptly intensified. This baleful chi did not leak outwards, instead being unceasingly absorbed by Yendi. The 3rd type of immortal energy began to fuse with his immortal chi. Yendi took a step forward, advancing from the 2 chi's profound immortal realm to the 3 chi's profound immortal realm. Not long ago, Yendi had passed the pure profound tribulation and achieved the tranquil profound immortal realm through the duo chi's fused aura. Now that he had taken a step forward, his cultivation and strength had skyrocketed. As he stepped forward, the edge of his saber also slashed forward. Suddenly, it was as if the world had changed. The momentum of creation surged forward. The world was long, but everything had changed beyond recognition. Everything was old and new, as if welcoming a brand new beginning. Everything that was old was swept into the pile of old papers, and became the funerary objects of the era. As the terrifying saber light descended, the myriad devils surrounding Yendi and the grand simplicity splendor cloud were all swept clean. Then, The blissful devil monarch was shocked again, as if he had thought of something. He didn't have the time to be shocked. He pointed his finger in the air, and streaks of red light descended, trying to strengthen the blissful myriad demon's formation. However, at this moment, Yendi strode forward once more. As he took this step, a bright, kind, positive aura circled around his body. Then this fourth type arose, merging with Yendi's immortal aura. As Yendi took his second step, the 3 Chi's profound immortal took another step forward, stepping into the 4 Chi's profound immortal realm, the tranquil peak realm. With this step, Yendi's saber intent surged madly once more. Bolstered by Yendi's strength, the saber formed of grand illusory spatial thunder chopped down once more. As the saber descended, the huge blissful myriad demon's array was reduced to dust in history. It was crushed by the unstoppable changes of fortune. The saber beam broke through the formation and slashed at the blissful demon monarch himself, forcing him to take a few steps back. The power concept of the turn of the eras, the change of heaven and earth. The blissful devil monarch was no longer doubtful, as he exclaimed in surprise. Having suffered this saber of Yendi's, he had truly comprehended the terrifying concept of the turn of eras. Due to the great calamity, this era had been divided into 2 eras, the near-ancient era and the present era. But strictly speaking, it was still the same era. The blissful devil monarch was born in the era before the great calamity. He had never experienced the true turn of the eras. However, with his current cultivation realm and his understanding of the great Tao of heaven and earth, he was sure that Yendi's saber was displaying the grand story of an old era ending and the birth of a new era. The grand virtual immortal's lifespan was limited to 129,600 years, which was equivalent to 1 yuan. However, if the turn of the eras happened, without the protection of an expert of a higher realm, the virtual immortal would perish under the turn of the eras. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust, they would be buried together with the old era, ending their existence. Although the blissful devil monarch wasn't injured by Yendi's saber, his devilish essence wasn't circulating smoothly and was on the verge of stagnation. That was the effect of the turn of the eras, where the old was destroyed to welcome the new. It was also the result of Yendi's continuous research and improvement of his saber art. The creation saber was another technique of the turn of the eras apart from instantaneous heavenly annihilation. The unique, profound, majestic, and domineering saber intent allowed him to be fearless against grand virtual experts of the 5 Chi's unification, even though he was in the tranquil, profound immortal realm. Yendi's eyes were cold as he broke through the blissful myriad devil's formation. Ferocious saber light slashed out horizontally like a thunderbolt sweeping across the void in front of him, slaughtering all great devils below the grand virtual realm, who were on the same level as him. The young experts after the great calamity, the 3 clear lineage has produced many extraordinary figures. A loud sigh resounded from afar. Many 9 underworld's great devils had found their way here. After locating the domain of 1,000 scales and confirming that Chun Xuanzong and Chu Lily were here, more and more 9 underworld's experts started gathering here. Other than the devil that was giving Feng Yunxing a hard time, no other grand heavenly realm great devils appeared. It was obvious that they were being intercepted. On the other hand, the Taoism's grand heavenly immortal experts were also being held back by top-notch great devils like the Wood Devil. As such, some 9 underworld's great devils managed to slip through the net and found their way to the domain of 1,000 scales. Their leader was clearly a devil that had reached the grand virtual realm. However, when this great devil swept his gaze across the battlefield, his heart sank. The 4-headed and 4-armed devil monarch was in dire straits due to Gao Qingxuan's attacks. His defeat was already set in stone, and he was only struggling to hold on. The devil monarch that was born from the 9 underworld's demon ape was also being suppressed by Ling Qing. Although he was enraged, he couldn't regain the initiative. Not only was he unable to approach the domain of 1,000 scales, but he was also being pushed further and further away from the domain of 1,000 scales. The blissful devil monarch was even more useless. He was completely helpless against the profound immortal realm Yendi. If it weren't for his 5 Chi's unification and devilish essence protecting him, he would have been injured by Yan Di's saber. Yan Di, Gao Qingxian, and Ling Qing held the upper hand against their respective opponents. With ease, they were able to take care of the other devils. Although there were many great devils, they couldn't fend off the three of them. They were forced to avoid them, with Long Xingqiuan and Taoist Cloud Conquest guarding them. The great devils couldn't take a single step forward. The group of devils that came as reinforcements didn't dare to underestimate them, and quickly lent a helping hand. With the addition of the fourth Grand Virtual Realm Devil Monarch, the pressure on Yan Di and the others increased slightly. It wasn't that they couldn't defeat the great devils. Instead, with their limited manpower, they had to prevent the great devils from breaking through their defenses and approaching the domain of thousand scales. Go! Other than Ling Qing, Yan Di, Gao Qingxian, Long Xingqiuan, and Taoist Cloud Conquest yelled in unison. A large number of formation weapons soared into the sky and formed formation talismans above their heads. Then they quickly linked together. As soon as the Tai Imperial Breaking Formation appeared, white radiances soared into the sky and swept away the surrounding dark devilish chi. The battle formation didn't even move as it enveloped the domain of thousand scales, causing the group of great devils to bleed. Chapter 1426. Currently, Ling Qing was also within the Tai Imperial Breaking Formation, receiving a certain degree of assistance from the formation's power. She and Gao Qingxian, who were already Grand Virtual Immortals, only received limited benefits from the formation's support. However, they were still much stronger than before. A battle between experts would only be decided by a hair's breadth. The two of them could instead display their advantages in actual combat. As the Great Array operated, white light enveloped the entire void. As the power of the array was activated, the dark demonic aura in the surroundings receded. For a time, the domain of thousand scales was impregnable. When the Grand Heavenly Realm Fiend Exalt, who was wrestling with Feng Yunxing, saw this, he unleashed a dark bolt of Yin thunder towards the Tai Imperial Breaking Formation. However, Feng Yunxing, who was already prepared, immediately slashed horizontally, intercepting the black lightning in midair, not giving the opponent a chance to exert further pressure. Yin Zhaoge did not make a move. Instead, he quietly stood amidst the pulsating streams of light within the domain of thousand scales and looked towards the skies above. His attention was split into two. On one hand, he was supporting Yan Di and the others. On the other hand, he was secretly paying attention to Chen Xuanzong, Chu Lili, and the other situation within the chaotic heavenly devil slaying ritual. Although he was currently able to deal with the attacks of the devils flawlessly, Yin Zhaoge's mind still did not relax in the slightest. While Yan Di's attacks were swift and fierce, he would not be able to sustain such tyrannical, proactive attacks for long periods of time. Now that he had formed a formation with the others, even though the sharpness of the formation wasn't as strong, he didn't have to worry about the rear, and could contend with the opponent for a long time. But on Feng Yunqing's side, she couldn't fight for long either. It wasn't that she didn't have enough strength, but she had to prevent the demonic wolf from eroding and attacking her body. Even though the last day's saber at the Golden Immortal Realm was sufficient to sweep through the entire battlefield, Feng Yunxing clearly wasn't prepared to take that step. Let's see who's faster. Yin Zhaoge muttered to himself as he gazed at the sky. If they could deal with the threat of the water demon first, then they would be able to advance and retreat freely. If the enemy destroyed their line of defense first, the situation might change, and the matter of dealing with the water demon might fall short of success. The most important thing to be careful of was that there might be other demons coming to support them, which would put further pressure on their defense line. As Yin Zhaoge pondered, his expression suddenly changed slightly as he gazed in another direction. There the void trembled. Demonic energy surged, and a great demon appeared. The leader of the devils that had come to this place was a blood-red sphere that was as large as a star. It was dark and gloomy, reeking of blood and ominous. Around him, there were other demons in twos and threes. This grand virtual devil monarch swept his gaze across the battlefield and spoke with a human voice. Chen Xuanzong and Chu Lili are both descendants of the Jade Clear lineage. Fellow Taoist of the Prime Clear lineage, Why bother making things difficult for us for them? His voice reverberated, but Gao Qingxian and Taoist Cloud Conquest's expressions remained unchanged. The three pure ones are of the same breath and branch. Even if there's a gap between us, it's our own business. What's so strange about working together against those who aren't from Taoism? Taoist Cloud Conquest said. Moreover, the teeth will be cold without the Li. We all know what kind of existence you 9 underworld fiends are. There's no need for us to argue, is there? Not to mention that the 3 clear lineages are all orthodox Taoism. Even the Buddhists, demons, and heretics have never sat back and watched the 9 underworlds wreak havoc. If not, as long as the vast freedom heavenly devil appears, we naturally wouldn't be able to do anything. The devil monarch that resembled a blood-red star spoke. You're right. However, have you ever thought about how your prime clear lineage isn't as powerful as the jade clear lineage? If you were to suffer even more losses, your authority within Taoism wouldn't be sufficient anymore. He let out a weird laugh. Sacrificing yourself for the jade clear and grand clear lineages and suffering losses, only to be oppressed by them in the future. Are you still willing to accept such a fate? Let's see who dies and who lives. Do you think you can talk me to death? Said Gao Qingxian indifferently. As she spoke, she slashed her sword. Under the Tai Imperial Breaking Formation's assistance, it traversed through the void and slashed towards the devil monarch that resembled a blood-red star. What a prime clear sword cultivator! What a prideful woman! As the devil monarch let out a weird laugh, blood-red radiance shrouded his body. Hundreds of smaller black stars appeared and surrounded Gao Qingxuan's sword light. Gao Qingxuan's expression was indifferent. She wasn't enraged at all. She stood proudly on the spot and guarded the Tai Imperial Breaking Formation. As long as he helped Chen Xuanzong and Chu Lili defend, today would be his victory. The water devil wouldn't be able to reincarnate, and the 9 underworlds plan would fail. There would be plenty of chances to fight against the devil monarch in the form of a blood-red star in the future. Like master, like disciple. The devil monarch let out a weird laugh, and blood-red radiance trembled. Upon hearing this, Yin Zhaoge and the others were moved. Gao Qingxian frowned. Taoist Cloud Conquest's attention shifted towards the blood-red star as well. If I want to kill you, I'll have to prove myself. I won't be able to kill you with words. The devil monarch let out a weird laugh. However, if I say someone will die right now, they won't be able to live to the next moment. His body suddenly turned transparent. Through the lingering blood mist, a silhouette could be vaguely seen. Upon seeing the silhouette's appearance, Gao Qingxuan's gaze turned cold. After all, that was her master, the Vine Sovereign Li Ying. This sudden change in events caused Feng Yunsheng, Yin Di and the others to feel suffocated. Just as Feng Yunsheng was about to move, the Grand Heavenly Realm Devil Lord closed in, threatening the entire domain of Thousand Scales. Gao Qingxian stared at the blood-red star, while Taoist Cloud Conquest's expression turned extremely solemn. He secretly transmitted his voice to Gao Qingxian. Is this real? Without waiting for Gao Qingxuan's reply, a weird chuckle resounded from within the blood-red star. The blood mist became even thinner, revealing the Vine Sovereign. However, streaks of blood-red radiance acted like chains, imprisoning her within the star. The Vine Sovereign didn't lose her consciousness. She circulated her sword intent and fought against the devilish radiance. Sensing the familiar sword intent, Taoist Cloud Conquest could tell that it was the Vine Sovereign, Li Ying even without Gao Qingxuan's reply. Unless one of the 6 great extinct devils, the Shadow Devil, personally disguised himself, it was impossible to impersonate her. However, the Shadow Devil was currently being obstructed by a Taoism Heavenly Lord. It was impossible for him to appear here. As such, despite being shocked, Gao Qingxian knew that it was her master. Ever since the roving Jade Heavens moved into the awakened sky cosmos, the Vine Sovereign, Li Ying had entered the void's outskirts and left by herself. Over the years, she didn't completely cut off contact with the roving Jade Heavens. However, it wasn't easy to contact someone from the void's outskirts. As the Vine Sovereign was disheartened, she rarely contacted the roving Jade Heavens. However, she never expected that the Vine Sovereign had already been captured by the 9 underworlds after their last contact. The two of them met under such circumstances. Gao Qingxian stared at her master. I don't expect you to be willing to work for the 9 underworlds. The great devil in the form of a blood-red star smiled and said, just stand by and watch today's battle. Chapter 1427. Gao Qingxian was the Vine Sovereign's direct disciple. She had been accepted by the Vine Sovereign since young. Although Taoist Cloud Conquest wasn't the Vine Sovereign's direct disciple, he had received pointers from the Vine Sovereign when his cultivation was still low. In fact, it wasn't just Taoist Cloud Conquest. Most of the active experts in the roving Jade Heavens, even if they weren't from the Vine Sovereign's lineage, had received pointers from the Vine Sovereign. As such, the prime clear descendants of the roving Jade Heavens, regardless of whether they were from the Vine Sovereign's lineage or not, they all addressed her as Old Ancestor. Seeing the Vine Sovereign being trapped by the 9 underworlds, Yan Di Longxingquan, and even Ling Qing's hearts sank. I only regret not being able to kill myself after being humiliated like this. Why would I regret dying? The Vine Sovereign said calmly, just take revenge for me in the future. Although her expression was calm, her tone was resolute, leaving no room for negotiation. Just by looking at the old woman's calm gaze, one could tell how calm her state of mind was. Anyone could tell that the Vine Sovereign was truly determined to die. She wasn't willing to compromise or get lucky at all. That's why I said that like master, like disciple. The great demon chuckled strangely. But even if you can fulfill your reputation of being unyielding and kill me to avenge you, I'm afraid your disciple will regret it. How can you bear to do that? Isn't it great that this matter can be resolved perfectly, and everyone will be happy? The Vine Sovereign said coldly. If I take a step back, I'll take a step back. If you have the chance to hold my disciple hostage and do whatever you want, I'd rather give up my life. I only hope that Qingxian and the others can kill you and bring me down with them. The Devil Monarch wasn't angered by the crimson starlight. He chuckled. Why would I? I've said it before. I don't expect you to be used by the 9 underworlds. As long as you don't obstruct us from welcoming the water and earth majesties, it'll be fine. The prime clear lineage has many sword cultivators who are proud and unyielding. I've always admired them, and I don't expect to gain much from them. The Vine Sovereign, who was trapped within the Crimson Star, snorted. Do you think the 9 underworld's evil devils are trustworthy? At the very least, I'm trustworthy. The great demon said to Gao Qingxian and Taoist Cloud Conquest. Why don't the two of you reconsider? After all, Chen Xuanzong and Chu Lily aren't of the same lineage as you two. Is it worth it to sacrifice the life of this practitioner's eating for them? As the great demon was speaking, the Vine Sovereign suddenly shouted angrily. Don't talk nonsense. I'll give you my life. How can I be threatened by you? Before he could finish, his voice suddenly stopped. Although the Vine Sovereign's figure could still be seen, her voice was blocked by the scarlet starlight. The great demon chuckled strangely. Her courage is commendable, and she is unyielding. However, her life and death is not up to her now. You guys will decide. Let's not talk about whether you have the ability to kill me and avenge her. Even if you can do it, is it worth it? The dead can't come back to life. It's useless to kill me. It's not like you don't have a chance to save her. Why are you hesitating? The Devil Monarch spoke eloquently, attempting to sway Gao Qingxian and Taoist Cloud Conquest's decision. At the same time, the other great devil's attacks on the Tai Imperial Breaking Formation and the domain of Thousand Scales never ceased. The 9 underworld's devils colluded with one another. When attacking, they intentionally pressured Ling Qing, Yan Di and Long Xingquan, allowing Gao Qingxian and Taoist Cloud Conquest to relax. However, they were also constantly paying attention to Gao Qingxian and Long Xingquan's situation. Once the two's mental state wavered, causing their performance to falter, the great devils wouldn't mind taking advantage of the situation. As for the Devil Monarch in the form of a blood-red star, he was also observing Yin Zhaoga, while paying attention to the 5 within the Tai Imperial Breaking Formation. If Gao Qingxian and Taoist Cloud Conquest really retreated, the remaining 3 wouldn't be able to maintain the Tai Imperial Breaking Formation. However, with Yin Zhaoga's reputation, despite his low cultivation, he might still be able to maintain the Tai Imperial Breaking Formation together with Yan Di, Long Xingquan, and Ling Qing. With the formation's assistance, even if he was a true immortal, the devils wouldn't dare to belittle him. If the two prime clear sword cultivators really retreated, we have to immediately attack and tear the formation apart. We won't give Yin Zhaoge any chance to salvage the situation. The great devils quickly communicated. However, at that moment, Yin Zhaoge, whom they were paying attention to, suddenly moved. Just as you said, Her Majesty the Vine Sovereign's safety is indeed up to us. Yin Zhaoge raised his head and looked at the colossal blood-red star within the dark void. Your words don't count either. His hand seals changed, and he was already prepared. As Yin Zhaoge spoke, the domain of thousand scales beneath his feet suddenly underwent a transformation. Tens of thousands of light streams that were leaping up and down on the spot, like fish leaping out of the water, suddenly stopped for a moment. The streams of light stopped moving, as if the flowing water had instantly turned into ice. The distant Radiance River was now akin to an ice river, with radiance refracting from the ice surface. Every stream of light solidified into a rhombus-shaped mirror. Then, from the center of every mirror, a ray of light flowed outwards, passing through the Tai Imperial Breaking Formation, and instantly shone upon the blood-red star. Like the myriad of streams returning to their origin, the myriad of light rays converged at a single point, the blood-red star. The great devil in the form of a blood-red star was startled. The myriad of light rays had already converged upon him. The devil monarch didn't need to guess to know that Yin Zhaoge's target was the Vine Sovereign. However, the mirror lights converged upon the Vine Sovereign, Li Ying's figure. As the myriad of mirror lights shone, they actually penetrated the great devil's body and froze the blood-red starlight surrounding the Vine Sovereign's body. The devil monarch circulated his devilish essence and felt obstructed, as if his entire body was paralyzed. The domain of thousand scales counters us. However, before I even stepped foot within, this Yin Zhaoge actually guided the domain of thousand scales power outwards. The great devil wanted to retreat, as the situation had exceeded his expectations. The other devils swarmed forward in an attempt to obstruct the myriad of mirror lights. However, Yin Zhaoge extended one of his hands forward and retracted the other. He made a posture of drawing a bow and aimed at the blood-red star. This was originally prepared to prevent the female emperor, Senior Xia, from falling into your hands. Although the changes in the hostage situation exceeded my expectations, I hope it can still be put to use. Yin Zhaoge let out a soft yell, causing the domain of thousand scales beneath him to undergo another transformation. As radiances flickered, the myriad of mirror lights started moving again, transforming into leaping scales. As for the myriad of light rays that converged upon the blood-red star, they transformed into surging streams of light, which penetrated into the blood-red star's interior. Thousand scales mirror, star-shooting crossbow. The streams of light were like arrows, which penetrated through the devil monarch's body. While rendering him immobile, they forcefully tore apart the devilish domain, creating a gigantic black hole within the void. Being guided by the streams of light, the blood-red star was brought flying backward and disappeared within the black hole. The black hole rapidly healed, causing the other devils to be unable to catch up to it. The Grand Heavenly Realm Devil Lord wanted to interfere. However, this time, it was Feng Yunqing's turn to obstruct his path. He could only watch as the blood-red star disappeared. What's the point? That prime clear sword cultivator is still in my hands. The devil monarch was dizzy from Yin Zhaoge's attacks. He finally managed to stabilize his figure within the void. In front of him, he was already in another universe, far away from the domain of thousand scales. The devil monarch in the form of a blood-red star was attempting to ease the numbness and weakness of his entire body. Suddenly he was shocked. Several auras suddenly appeared, as if they had been waiting for a long time. Chapter 1428. After being shot by Yin Zhaoge's star-shooting crossbow, the devil monarch, that resembled a blood-red star, was forcefully sent out of the battlefield. Due to the changes in space-time, he was already very far away from the domain of thousand scales when he finally stabilized his footing. He was in another universe. At this moment, the domain of thousand scales restraining power against the evil devils was fully displayed. Even with the devil domain created by the grand heavenly realm devil lord sealing the surrounding void, the star shooter crossbow was still able to create an opening and send the blood star devil monarch out. The gap instantly closed up, making it too late for the other great demons to catch up. Such a change would require the mobilization of the entire domain of thousand scales power, which would result in a huge consumption. It was difficult to use it repeatedly within a short period of time. Therefore, Yan Zhaoge had been keeping his composure all this while, observing the situation. Chu Lily had been captured by the 9 underworlds before, and Jie Mingkong had been looking for her. Therefore, Yan Zhaoge had prepared for the worst, in case Jie Mingkong fell into the hands of the 9 underworlds. This star-shooting crossbow was specially prepared to save people. However, he didn't expect that someone would become a hostage. It wasn't female Empress Jie Mingkong, but the Vine Sovereign Li Ying. Although there was a change, the decision to save them would not waver. Under the attack of the star-shooting crossbow, not only did it send the Blood Star Devil Monarch to another part of the void, the domain of thousand scales' suppressive effect against evil devils had also heavily injured the great devil. Under the influence of his injuries, the demonic aura within the Blood Star Devil Monarch's body became sluggish, and his entire body felt numb. Not to mention injuring the trapped Vine Sovereign, even continuing to suppress this 4-chi profound immortal was a strenuous task. The blood-red brilliance dispersed like a cloud of mist, unable to gather again for a long time. At the same time, the auras of other immortal realm experts appeared in the void. As the aura surged, a few sword lights lit up in the dark void. The Blood Star Devil Monarch's heart sank. Since Yan Zhaoge had sent him here, it was indeed not without reason. If he didn't follow up, the Vine Sovereign would still be in the hands of the 9 Nether, and wouldn't be able to break free. Although he had delayed the Vine Sovereign's actions for a while, it wouldn't be in vain. He had used the star-shooting crossbow to heavily injure the great demon, and sent it here to prevent other great demons from interfering, so that it would be easier for him to save the great demon. The star-shooting crossbow would open a spatial crack, and send people to a specific location. The side of the 3 clear lineage had specially arranged for people to lie in ambush here and rescue the hostages. The sword light faded slightly, and 3 figures appeared. One was in front while the other 2 were at the back. They were approaching the Blood Star Devil Monarch. The leader was a middle-aged man. He wore a high hat and ancient clothes. His face was solemn and upright, like a sword that could open the sky. However, he did not show his edge. He was like a lonely peak that towered into the clouds. It was the sword sovereign Yu Jinbei. Behind Yu Jinbei were 2 people. One of them was a black-clothed youth, his disciple Nie Jingshan. The other was a green-clothed woman, the roving Jade Heaven's clear successor Yu Yi. They were waiting here as a flexible group of people. If the enemy had a hostage, Yan Zhaoge would find an opportunity to send the enemy here, and Yu Jinbei and the others would rescue them. If the enemy didn't have any hostages, and the situation at the domain of thousand scales was tense, they would still have a chance to traverse through space. Yan Zhaoge would then use the reverse star-shooting crossbow and borrow the domain of thousand scales strength to bring them to the battlefield to provide reinforcements. Now that the Blood Star Devil Monarch was sent here, Yu Jinbei and the others, who were waiting here, immediately took action. When they realized that the hostage wasn't the female emperor, Jie Mingkong, but the Vine Sovereign, Li Ying, Yu Jinbei and the others were surprised. Especially Yu Yi. To her, the Vine Sovereign wasn't simply her maternal grandmother's master. During her growth, she had received the Vine Sovereign's teachings. She was a senior with a deep relationship with her. The green-clothed woman, who was usually distracted, had her gaze as sharp as a sword. She was unprecedentedly focused. The Sword Sovereign. Yu Jinbei looked at the Vine Sovereign Li Ying. After his initial surprise, his gaze quickly regained its calmness. Without any hesitation, he continued rushing towards the blood-red star. Yu Jinbei. On the contrary, after the Vine Sovereign saw who it was, her expression changed. Leave. I don't need your help. Yu Jinbei's expression remained unchanged. He slashed his sword downwards, after dealing with the 9 underworlds, we'll talk about our personal grudges. Wherever the sword light went, layers of blood-red radiances were dispersed. The Blood-Star Devil Monarch, who was injured by the domain of Thousand Scales, was temporarily unable to recover the grand virtual 5 Qis unification. Yu Jinbei, who had already ascended to the profound immortal pinnacle realm, brandished his sword light. The Blood-Star Devil Monarch, whose body was paralyzed and his devilish aura couldn't circulate smoothly, was forced to retreat. With Yan Xintong's descendant taking action, I'm too ashamed to face Qinglian. The Vine Sovereign suddenly yelled, Yu Jinbei, if I still need your help, I won't even be able to face Qinglian in the netherworld. Green radiances flickered within her eyes, and green radiances surfaced on her skin. Under the situation where she was still being suppressed by the Blood-Star Devil Monarch, the Vine Sovereign forcefully circulated her immortal extermination, sword intent, and unleashed it to its limits. The shackle-like blood-red radiances that bound her body started crumbling. However, after the green radiances flashed past the Vine Sovereign's face, her face turned pale. Clearly, she was also heavily injured. Even so, she didn't have any intention of stopping. She continued to forcefully push herself to escape, before Yu Jinbei took action. Ancestor Granny, Yu Yi exclaimed. She couldn't care about anything else, and unsheathed her sword. As she unsheathed her sword, boundless radiances burst forth from her sword's edge. She, who originally planned to store her sword and nurture it, no longer cared about holding back. She unsheathed her sword and unsheathed it. As an exalt, her cultivation was limited. Even if the Blood-Star Devil Monarch was heavily injured, he wouldn't be able to do much. While she trusted Yu Jinbei and Nie Jingxian, the Vine Sovereign was extremely against it. If she, who was a prime clear disciple, were to help, the Vine Sovereign wouldn't reject it. Without suppressing herself, Yu Ye's sword Qi soared into the skies and roared across the universe. She immediately charged towards the immortal mortal tribulation and pushed open the immortal door. Yu Jinbei and Nie Jingxian frowned as they looked at the Vine Sovereign. The master and disciple shook their heads, but they didn't ignore her. Instead, they continued advancing with their swords in hand. The Blood-Star Devil Monarch let out a sinister laugh. You want me to die? Amidst the sinister and mournful laughter, an ethereal voice resounded. Emperor Heart Devil, please show your divinity. The great devil's blood-red radiance quickly transformed into a myriad of colors. The Heart Devil and the Shadow Devil were being held back by the Taoism 3 clear lineages, Heavenly Lord experts, preventing them from descending. However, his prowess was unpredictable. Under the influence of the incantation, the Blood-Star Devil Monarch benefited from it, freeing himself from the paralyzed state. The injuries inflicted by the star-shooting crossbow hadn't healed completely. Currently, the Great Devil was still in an extremely weakened state. He no longer possessed the miraculousness of the grand virtual realm. However, at this moment, he seemed to have gone berserk. The 5-colored radiances around him rapidly converged and compressed towards the center. Chapter 1429. The temperament of evil spirits was mostly manifested in 2 types. One was violent and crazy, and the other was sinister and cunning. No matter how the Blood-Star Devil Monarch usually behaved, at this moment, he was displaying the fiery temper of a demon from the netherworld. The Vine Sovereign attempted to break free from his suppression from within. Yu Jinbei, Nie Jingxian, and Yu Yi attacked from the outside. After the Great Devil regained control of his body with the help of the external ritual, he immediately tried to kill the Vine Sovereign. Yu Jinbei's sword light split up, and instantly multiplied from 1 to 10,000. They pierced towards the colorful stars in front of him from all directions. After the sword light pierced into the other party's body, the Blood-Star Devil Monarch's strength instantly slowed down, and even came to a stop. Nie Jingxian and Yu Yi walked forward side by side. They brandished their swords towards the center of the star, in an attempt to work together to save the Vine Sovereign. The demon gave out a heaven-shocking roar. After going berserk, his emotions slowly calmed down. However, it was so calm and cold that it made people tremble. Let's die together. Amidst the terrifying sound, the multicolored streams of light around the star burst out in reverse, and began to gush in all directions. Countless rays of light shot towards Yujinbei, and the others like sharp arrows. At this moment, the great devil that was injured by the domain of thousand scales power seemed to have regained the dignity of a grand virtual devil monarch expert. The sonorous voice of the great Tao even began to ring in everyone's ears. Yujinbei inhaled lightly. The myriad of sword lights retracted and condensed on his body. Then he slashed with his sword. As he slashed out with his sword, Yujinbei's figure became erratic. It was as if he was simultaneously existing in countless space-time and in various locations. Yujinbei, who didn't understand the prime clear immortal trapping sword, could use the jade illusory heaven opening sword to split open the heavens and earth and change the chi of creation. It was comparable to a prime clear profound immortal's highest attainment in the immortal trapping sword. Yujinbei, who seemed to be everywhere, intercepted the rain-like streams of five-colored lights, causing them to be unable to threaten the others. The Blood-Star Devil Monarch's fatal attack was neutralized by Yujinbei's attack and defense. However, after the multicolored streams of light dissipated, only darkness remained where the stars had been. The darkness silently expanded, turning into a chaotic whole that devoured everything in its surroundings. The distorted space-time and stars couldn't resist the power of the barrier, destroying everything in the surroundings. Chapter 1434. Yin Zhaoge calmly looked at the Chen Xuanzong in front of him and said with an indifferent expression, "Since your memories are the same as Senior Chen's, you should know that this anti-devil countering rune was created by my wife and Senior Chen after studying it together." Chen Xuanzong stared at Yin Zhaoge. "In other words, you didn't even tell him about the additional changes to the anti-devil countering rune." "I didn't do that," Yin Zhaoge said plainly. "Only the world is ever-changing. Today's battle had many unexpected changes. Under the circumstances, I came up with some new ideas." Under Yin Zhaoge's stimulation, the anti-devil countering rune formed by the Chili Chi was engraved on the Danzhong acupoint on Chen Xuanzong's chest. Then, rays of blue radiances started surging on the surface of Chen Xuanzong's body. They continuously wandered around and finally gathered at the Danzhong acupoint. Within Chen Xuanzong's cold and silent eyes, radiances were still flickering and jumping about, which seemed extremely unstable. "What does Lily plan to do?" His eyes flickered and looked at Chu Lily. Chu Lily was startled. She looked at the familiar face with a complicated expression. Yet, it seemed extremely unfamiliar now. Although the radiances within Chen Xuanzong's pupils were flickering, his voice remained calm. "Do you want to leave with me? To you, is it really important whether you join the devil's path or not?" Chu Lily originally wanted to say something. However, after hearing this, she was shocked and pursed her lips as she looked at Chen Xuanzong. "Lily, you resisted the devil's path because of my teachings. It's because you were taught by me and others." The other party's tone was extremely calm. "Now, I've already entered the 9 underworlds. Aren't you going to follow me?" Chu Lily lowered her head. "You're no longer my master. You're the water devil. What you're saying now is merely trying to bewitch me in order to escape from death." "Indeed, I'm trying to find a way to escape," the other party answered honestly. "However, I'm not trying to bewitch you. I'm of the Jade Clear lineage, and I've received many favors. Now that I've joined the devil's path, I'm being looked down upon by my fellow Taoists, and they even want to kill me. This is only natural. However, what about you, Lily?" Chu Lily raised her head and was met with a pair of deep eyes. "You were confined in the back mountain of the Jade Sky Peak since you were a child. You were not allowed to go out and see anyone. You had no playmates and no childhood. Those who could get in touch with you were all watching you warily. After killing Chu Huan, the reason why you were kept in the world beyond worlds was to figure out the secrets of the 9 underworld's evil devils. Jade Clear, is there anything about Taoism that you are reluctant to part with?" Chu Lily's lips moved, but in the end, she remained silent. The Vine Sovereign's willpower can be said to be extremely firm. However, it could also be said that such a firm willpower resulted in such a tragedy. Overly strong evil thoughts or obsessions would eventually transform into devilish thoughts, causing one to succumb to the devil and fall into the 9 underworlds. The Vine Sovereign, Liang, harbored intense hatred towards Yu Jinbei, and even towards Yin Xintong's lineage. She was even captured by the Great Devil, threatened and tortured. Yet, she was still able to maintain a clear mind. Even Yin Zhaoge was impressed by how firm her willpower was. Unfortunately, it was precisely because of this that such a tragic ending occurred. Yu Jinbei and Yin Di looked at each other with a complicated expression. They agreed with Yin Zhaoge's words. "The dead have perished. May they rest in peace," said Yin Di slowly. "May they rest in peace." Yin Zhaoge smiled bitterly. "We still have to worry about the living. I hope that senior apprentice brother Nia and senior apprentice sister, you are blessed by the heavens." Yu Jinbei shook his head. "The spatial turbulence might lead to different universes. After I settled down, I searched around, but I didn't find anything. They should have landed somewhere far away from me. I can only hope that they're still within the void's boundless outskirts and not in the heretics' territory, Buddhism's, or the demon race's territory." Yin Zhaoge asked. "They shouldn't have gotten separated from each other, right?" Yu Jinbei thought for a while and said, "They shouldn't have. If that's the case, the two of them can take care of each other. It'll be safer for them." Yin Di said, "No matter if it's junior apprentice niece Nia or junior apprentice niece Yu, they're both peerless geniuses. If the two of them work together and keep a low profile, they should be able to deal with most situations. A friend in need is a friend indeed. I wonder if sparks would fly between the two of them after going through thick and thin together?" Yin Zhaoge tried to be cheerful and said, "Although they occasionally fought against each other, they actually admired each other and got along quite well." Yin Di and Yu Jinbei's gaze turned weird. "Don't look at me like that. I'm seriously thinking about this." Yin Zhaoge didn't know whether to laugh or cry. According to senior apprentice Uncle Yu, when they disappeared, they didn't witness the Vine Sovereign's final moment of death. Now they're just worried, but they still have some hope. "Father, I heard that you and Mother didn't get to know each other without fighting. Grandfather and grandmother, senior apprentice Uncle Long, and senior apprentice Uncle Gao aren't worth mentioning. They're all very strong, and they turned their hostility into marriage. Senior apprentice brother Nia and senior apprentice sister Yu are their disciples. I can't help but think about it." Chapter 1442. Heavenly Lord of Plentiful Treasure? Nie Jingshan's eyes narrowed. He looked around and saw the vast expanse of yellow fog in front of him. "So isn't this place?" The two of them looked at each other and said in unison, "Immortal Execution Formation." Throughout the ages, the most famous vicious formation was even more famous than the Yellow River of Nine Bends Formation. The prime clear lineage of Taoism was a powerful formation that stabilized their foundation and destiny, the number one killing formation throughout the ages. Unfortunately, he hadn't appeared in the world for many years, becoming the most regretful legend of the prime clear lineage. According to rumors, other than the prime clear Lord of Numinous Treasure, only his first disciple, the Lord of Plentiful Treasure, knew the complete immortal extermination formation. After the Lord of Numinous Treasure transcended, and the Lord of Plentiful Treasure went missing, the immortal extermination array was lost. As for the Empyrean of Plentiful Treasure, he was also a famous figure during the ancient investiture of the gods' era. But after the ancient era, they vanished without a trace. As for the whereabouts of this prime clear bigwig, there were many different opinions. Two of the most widespread theories were related to the Spirited Mountains Tathagata Buddha and the Tishita Palace's Taishang Laojun. Of course, Nie Jingshan and Yu Yi had heard from Yin Zhaoge that the two existences weren't the Lord of Plentiful Treasure's transformations. However, the fact that he could be considered to be a Tao ancestor proved the strength and prestige of this prime clear bigwig. He was publicly acknowledged to be one of the grand heavenly immortals who had ascended from the immortal realm to the Tao realm. In actual combat, the Lord of Plentiful Treasure could hardly be considered invincible among the grand heavenly realm. However, as the first disciple of the prime clear heavenly lord of numinous treasure, and one of the oldest heavenly lords of Taoism, the Taoist of plentiful treasure was indeed very close to the Tao realm. The Lord of Plentiful Treasure was one of the three great sword cultivators of Taoism that had been praised since ancient times. If Duobao Heaven Reverend gathered the 4 celestial slaying swords and set up the complete celestial slaying formation, then he would undoubtedly be an undefeatable legend under the Tao realm. Exterminating immortals is sharp, slaughtering immortals is deadly, trapping immortals is red. The transformations of the absolute immortal are boundless. The blood of the great Luo immortals stained their robes. The first few sentences briefly described the characteristics of the prime clear 4 supreme sword arts, while the last sentence described the invincibility of the immortal extermination formation. Nie Jingxian and Yu Ye's minds were agitated to be able to witness the ominous formation that had been renowned for so many years. However, at this moment, a layer of faint purple radiance suddenly appeared on the dark red sword's edge. Purple radiance flickered on the edge, and the dark red sword seemed to have transformed into the unstoppable edge of the great Tao. It split the heavens and earth apart, carrying on the past and ending history. The horrifying torrent contained the transformation of the heavens and earth. With an unstoppable momentum, it crushed its way forward. Within it contained the concept of eras changing, breaking through the old and welcoming the new, which allowed the dark red sword to slash through the dark devilish ocean. The devil monarch let out a groan. As the purple radiance flickered, his devilish essence vaguely felt as if it had turned stiff. Although it couldn't harm his 5-cheese unification physique, he wasn't confident enough to face the dark red sword's edge. In the end, he was forced to retreat. The dark red sword brushed past him without any hesitation. It rushed out of the devilish domain through the opening he left behind, shifting space, and immediately flew into another universe. Under the sword light, Gao Qingxuan's expression remained the same, and she continued steering the ship. At the bow of the ship, Yen Di stood proudly. The formless saber formed by the grand illusory spatial thunder pointed forward. With an unstoppable momentum, it supported the flying ship, and combined with Gao Qingxuan's sword light. The dark red sword continued traversing through the boundless void, avoiding its opponents one after another. However, as the devil experts gathered, someone finally managed to keep up with the dark red sword's speed. Evidently, the devil monarch specialized in this. As he flew and shifted like a wisp of smoke, he didn't seem any inferior to the golden-winged great roc of the same cultivation realm. This great devil closely followed behind the sword light. When the sword light encountered a place that it had to forcefully break through, its speed would slow down for a moment. Whenever this happened, the smoke-like great devil would get closer to it. Finally, he managed to catch up to the dark red sword, and immediately entangled the sword light. However, at this moment, the dark red sword's hilt suddenly turned black. Blue-black devilish flames seemed to be burning on its hilt, bringing an end to the world. The black flames formed an impassable chasm, isolating the wisp of smoke and stopping his pursuit. The brutal saber intent rampaged and clashed with the devil monarch. The devil monarch's figure stiffened, and he remained where he was. The dark red sword light flickered, and he immediately disappeared. His opponent's pursuit was in vain. Under the sword light, Feng Yunxing stood quietly at the stern of the divine vessel. Her clothes were as white as snow, and she held onto her black saber. Mobile users, please browse read for a better reading experience. However, the pressure on Yin Zhaoge, Yen Di, and Gao Qingxuan's side was increasing due to the increasing number of opponents. More and more enemies found Confucius and crossed the defensive line. Yen Zhaoge and the others were constantly chasing after them. They had to be especially wary of Fuluazi and the Twilight Mist Devil Monarch. Once the demon and devil overtook Yin Zhaoga and the others' interception, they would increase their speed and shake them off. It would be incomparably difficult to intercept them again. Among the Taoism experts present, only Gao Qingxian and her clone's dual sword amalgamation could compete with them in terms of speed. If both opponents broke through, it meant that at least one of them wouldn't be able to catch up to them. Amidst the intense battle, the worst-case scenario had really occurred. While Gao Qingxian and Yu Jinbei were focused on their battle, their gazes suddenly flickered. Shock appeared on their faces, followed by joy. They were experienced in battles, and their emotions didn't fluctuate much. However, their opponents were, after all, experts with higher cultivation and strength than them. Even the slightest change would allow them to seize the opportunity. Fuluazi and the Twilight Mist Devil Monarch broke through Yin Zhaoga and the other's defensive line and sprinted towards the distance. Looking at their departing silhouettes, Yin Zhaoga and the others became anxious. On the other side, the victorious Fighting Buddha, who was busy contending against Feng Yunsheng, suddenly felt something. Half of his 20 Buddha heads turned around and looked towards Fuluazi's direction. As Fuluazi and the Twilight Mist Devil Monarch were sprinting, radiance suddenly rose in front of them. As the horrifying black radiance rampaged, a despairing aura of death manifested within the void. Looking from afar, the boundless cosmic void was pitch black to begin with. However, the black radiance seemed to be even more gloomy and cold, as if it was announcing the final destination of all life forms, eternal silence. Everything that was alive would return to death. Fuluazi was a great demon, while the Twilight Mist Devil Monarch was an infernal devil. The two experts' hands were stained with blood. However, at this moment, they felt suffocated in front of the black radiance. As the son of the Rock of 10,000 Cloudy Miles, Fuluazi was extremely knowledgeable. Looking at the black radiance that made him feel as if his life was withering, he subconsciously stopped in his tracks. Immortal Slaughtering Sword. Chapter 1453. Wherever the black light shone, one's heart would involuntarily feel cold despair. Their vitality would wither, their chi and blood would deteriorate, their bodies would become powerless, and even their thoughts would become stagnant. It was as if they were about to enter the deathly silent world of the dead. Within the black light, an ancient sword hovered silently. The Immortal Slaughtering Sword. The #1 sword in the world for killing. It was not a sword intent born from cultivating the prime clear supreme art, the Immortal Slaughtering Sword manual, nor was it a materialized sword light. It was a true divine weapon, a supreme treasure of the prime clear lineage, the immortal extermination formation of the ancient investitures of the gods. Other than the formation itself, there were also 4 swords personally passed down by the Lord of Prime Clear Numinous Treasure as the formation treasures. The ancient sword hovering within the black light was one of the 4 swords used to set up the immortal extermination formation, the Immortal Slaughtering Sword. Although it had been covered in dust for many years, it immediately awed all living beings once it was unsealed and seen the light of day. There were many knowledgeable people present. After recognizing the Immortal Slaughtering Sword, they were shocked. Who is the current owner of this sword? During the ancient investitures of the gods' era, the prime clear lineage was defeated in the end. The immortal extermination formation was destroyed by 4 Tao realm experts, and the 4 swords used to set up the formation fell into the hands of the Jade Clear lineage. According to legends, it was the Jade Clear bigwig expert Master Red Essence who obtained the Immortal Slaughtering Sword. However, Master Red Essence had not appeared for many years. During the middle journey to the West era, there were rumors of his death, but his whereabouts remained a mystery. In this current era, with the Great Calamity, many truths have been buried even further in the dust of history. Now that the Immortal Slaughtering Sword had reappeared, how could they not think about it? If Master Red Essence had not died, he would be a genuine grand heavenly immortal, a heavenly lord of Taoism, and a veteran expert during the ancient investitures of the gods' era. If Master Red Essence had died, and the Immortal Slaughtering Sword had fallen into the hands of his enemies, then the current owner of the Immortal Slaughtering Sword would most likely not be someone easy to deal with. He might even be stronger than Master Red Essence. Fuluazi was not the only one who was apprehensive. Even the Twilight Mist Devil Monarch, who was chasing after Xuefei and Shijun, suddenly stopped. The previous owner of the immortal slaughtering sword should have died in the hands of the Mahasvara heavenly demon long ago. Wisps of light smoke kept circling in the void.